What's up, my beautiful people? Exile451 here with another daily dose of Reddit hope and happy, and today we're going back into r/AskReddit to go through some stories about people's lowest points before finding success. So, let's get to it. Okay, so the AskReddit question was, successful people of Reddit, what was your lowest point before success? Been a while since I hit this thread up, and it's probably the last time I'm going there, but there's a few stories left in here that I think some of you would benefit from hearing. I ran into a high school classmate a while back. I've posted this before, but it bears repeating. A guy in high school just didn't like me and I him. We got into a big fight. He broke my nose and I knocked a couple of his teeth out. Off campus. No police were involved, but about 10 years later, I saw him sleeping on the street near where I worked. I woke him up and asked him what was going on. He told me about his life after high school. He knocked up his girlfriend, her parents made them get married, and they divorced a year later. He got into drugs and ended up alienating everyone. I asked him if he was still using and he said no, he couldn't buy a dose anyways. I felt bad for him, so I'd asked if he'd like to stay in my guest house, a one-room cottage set up like an efficiency apartment, for a little while. He took me up on it and got a night's sleep in an actual bed for the first time in years, his words. I bought him some clothes and fed him for about a month until I found him a job with a contractor I was doing some work for. Long story short, it's been 6 years, he now owns a contracting business, has a wife and a new baby boy, and just bought the house down the street from me. Just goes to show, no matter how far you can fall, there's still always hope, and that there's still good people in this world. Follow up to that one. I have a friend of mine that called me from out of the blue last week. He found out I was working minimum wage at a call center after moving back to our hometown from out of state. He must have heard how we, my family, was struggling. So he got me a job with a local roofing company and I start in 2 weeks. I am so freaking excited. Your story is amazing. Your patience and kindness to others through one story is one I hope someday I can repay through my own life, as my friend has just done for me and my family. I own 3 websites that get me by. I'm not a millionaire and I don't live on food stamps. I'm middle class. As someone who is always trying new things, I will tell you the lowest point of running a business is the people you know who mentally wear you down. The lowest point is not failing. It's when other people you know rub it in your face and say, "I told you it wouldn't work," or "Why do you even try?" You don't know until you experiment and try. Anyone can tell you something isn't going to work, but try it for yourself so you can try and make it work. You will hear successful people over and over again say you need to remove these negative people from your life because they will drag you down, and this is true. Those people are the lowest in my life, and unfortunately, they're family. Failing is not bad because you can learn from it. It's people that have no idea what you are trying to accomplish and then try to give their 2 cents even though they are clueless what they're talking about. So I keep my business efforts to myself and don't let the word out what I'm working on until it is proven to work. Oh, on a similar note, there is no school out there to become a CEO. You have to do it on your own and figure out how to run a company. Is it hard? No. But there is a lot to learn and people are difficult and stubborn. Boy, if there isn't so much truth in that one. 354 days ago, I was admitted into an ER for psychosis relating to bipolar disorder and heavy drinking. Today, I've held down a job for 4.5 months at a beverage distributor's and I'm on the wait list to get into a technical college for an instrumentation and control program. I'm not as successful as many of the people in this thread, but I'm proud of not going crazy for almost a year. You know, that in and of itself is an accomplishment. Believe me when I say that I know what you're talking about. Not going crazy for almost a year that's definitely an accomplishment. I nearly failed multiple key courses in college that I needed for my engineering degree. While the rest of my classmates either sailed through with minimum neurosis or dropped the major altogether, I was sobbing on the dormitory floor amidst a pile of textbooks. Literally, this was my lowest precise moment. And fending off my parents and my friends' solicitous intimations that maybe I just wasn't cut out for it. Instead, I dropped and later retook the classes I couldn't salvage, scrapped my grades up to a C in the classes I could, and clung to the hope that real-life engineering wasn't going to be a series of multiple-choice tests. 5 years out of school and I'm working at the top engineering company in my field and sitting on enough stock to buy a house in California. Turns out creativity and tenacity in the face of failure will stand you in much better stead in real life than getting lots of A's in school. Had a 1v1 with a 66 of Gibson's whiskey. I locked myself in the bathroom and kept drinking that whole dang thing by myself. It was a showdown. I knew I had a problem, so for some reason I wanted to finish that dang bottle and be done with it. I was talking on the phone with my sister and she was getting upset. It was then I realized how my alcoholic ways wasn't only affecting me, but my family too. I quit drinking, moved back home, and applied for a communications program with a tough entry screening process. I worked my butt off for 6 months, stayed sober, and wouldn't you know it, I got accepted. It was 2 years ago I was in that bathroom, drinking that whiskey straight. I'm halfway through my second year of college. You can do anything if you set your mind to it. Don't know if you consider that success, but I think I'm on the right track. No, that's a success. Overcoming addiction, dealing with those issues, cleaning up your life like that to be able to make something better of it, that in and of itself is a huge success. In 2010, I was newly divorced, recovering from a second shoulder surgery, and my company approached me and said that I was not completing my work in a timely manner, so I can take a severance and quit, or they will review me again 2 weeks after the offer expires, and I will most likely be fired. Long story short, manager hated me and went over my VP's head to get me fired. VP fought back and was at least able to get me the severance. From 2010 to 2011, I was out of work. I made 3 months of pay stretch until the beginning of December, and at that point, I was out of money. I got a lucky break though. Just 2 days before Christmas, I settled my workers' comp case, the reason for my surgeries to my shoulder, and most likely part of the reason to let me go, and got $10K. Unfortunately, being late on all my bills added a ton of fees, and in one shot, I paid $6K to get back to current. So $4K was all I had left. And in February, I had to stop paying everyone again. It got right down to the wire for a while. Even with money from my tax return, I was about done. House was in foreclosure, and all I could do was pay water, gas, cable, and power. Food was getting scarce. And before anyone complains about me needing cable, it was for internet access. I paid $30 a month so I could keep applying for work. I sent out over 2,000 resumes in a year. Things were getting ugly. I had a friend that saw my plea on Facebook for anyone with a lead for a job to let me know. He asked for my resume in May, but by the beginning of July, I hadn't heard anything, so I asked him about it. He was surprised I hadn't been contacted and placed my resume in several managers' hands. And I got a call. Long story short, I landed a career, that was paying $10K more than I was previously making. After that, I worked everything out with my bill collectors except Amex, and I just settled with them a couple months ago. And now I am back on my feet in a big way. And I know what it's like to be broke, but not destitute. I had a friend recently post that she was having an old Pediasure for dinner while her 2 kids were having cereal. I sent them a large pizza and a couple 2 liters of Coke, and then took her to Costco the next day and bought her close to $200 in groceries. She said she was very grateful but embarrassed. I explained I knew what it's like to be that broke, and it is never easy to swallow your pride to accept help when you need it. Told her there is no shame in accepting help when you are out of options. She was out of work from a knee surgery. She doesn't make even a third what I do, and she has 2 kids to take care of, but being out of work means no money coming in. In almost any other time of my life, I would not have been able to buy someone groceries like I did for her without feeling a serious strain on my budget. For the first time, I could drop $200 and walk away without ever blinking. I have reached a milestone of financial success, and I gotta pay it forward. Success is always going to be determined by others to some respect. We all have an inherent temptation to determine our success by comparing the success of others. 2 years ago, I was living in a crappy apartment in the ghetto because I was in love with a foreign man that lied to me for the 2 years prior to that about having a wife. I tried to work things out. For a long time, I was prone to crappy relationships for a number of reasons, and I definitely was suffering from some bodily health and mental health issues. It ended with him abandoning me to go to another country, I was supposed to wait for him, to simultaneously witness the birth of his son and to leave his wife. Remember kids, had a lot of issues. I screwed around with an ex while working as a waitress despite the fact I had a college degree. Graduated right at the height of the recession. Everyone thought I was a screw-up, and most of them didn't know the whole story. So my lowest point was realizing I was abandoned, that good intentions meant nothing, and I was living in a ghetto, practically starving in the dead of winter because I had really screwed up the idea of love and a seemingly insurmountable sense of pride. And I had a best friend. We'd been bed buddies in college and always kept in touch, and I convinced him to visit me. I moved in with him 4 months later, a state away. My success now? A 2-year relationship with my best friend and a wonderful man, a solid job that I've received 2 promotions in, the prospect of my own house, and I'm considering opening a restaurant of my own. I still wait tables, but make almost $30,000 more now and work for wonderful people that offer us benefits. When I was smoking 1/8 of meth a week in my bathroom at 19. Now 27, make $75,000 as an engineer. Funny how things change. I was a heroin addict, nearly dead. 120 pounds, and I'm 5'9". Today, I own a rather successful marketing company as well as a few other things, and let me tell you, what you put in is what you get out. Live life and keep at it. I still have no friends locally, just a lot of money. No, it hasn't brought me happiness. Edit, still clean today, and by my grace, I will be tomorrow as well. I don't know if I meet the definition of success, but I have a job that I love that allows me a lifestyle far superior to what I ever imagined. Lowest point, working the graveyard shift at a gas station for minimum wage, $4.25 an hour back in '94. Company does not offer any discount on anything sold at Quickie Mart. No restrictions on what is in the trash, of course. Find myself one morning at 5 eating expired burgers, crappy to begin with even when still legal to sell, in the dumpster behind said gas station. Hiding from customers. Decided right there and then that I needed to switch my life around. Best motivation ever. Created a throwaway to weigh in. I work in banking, am happily married, and have 2 post-secondary degrees. 2.5 years ago, I was committed to a mental hospital after taking bad drugs and having a very public meltdown in what was then my dream job. I lost absolutely everything professionally and almost every friend I had, but not my wife. I thought of killing myself dozens of times per day to the point where it comforted me. I was flat broke and had no means of making money. I gained 30 pounds and stayed in bed all day, every day. Whatever is ailing you can be overcome. Be honest with yourself and embrace the sadness, but not more than those that have stuck by your side. Get help if you need it, anonymously if you must. As my father said to me during these times, this too shall pass. Keep your head up and believe that better times are ahead, because they are. 13 years ago, I was sitting alone in an armory in the basement of a US Army barracks, plastered on Jim Beam and putting about 4 pounds of pressure on a 5-pound trigger of a loaded, chambered, and cocked Beretta M9 that was residing in my mouth. CLP tastes very, very bad, by the way. I was being formally investigated for the loss of some very sensitive equipment that I had nothing whatsoever to do with. But it was looking like they were going to railroad me anyways, and that would mean a felony, Leavenworth, dishonorable discharge, and a little prospect for a future afterwards. And also, my fiancée was trying very hard to sleep with another man, and not being particularly sly about it. I was pretty much ready to declare life a failed experiment. Why am I still here? I don't know. For whatever reason, I didn't do it, and with the help of a wise old supply sergeant, I managed to prove my innocence. I got the heck out of the Army at the end of my 3 years. Since then, I have learned that the Army wasn't universally crap, and that luck plays a huge role in your experience of it. I later served a stint in the National Guard, full of good leadership, great comrades, and had a very good time of it. I eventually realized that you just have to roll with the bad, discarding it when you can, and be fiercely loyal to the good that comes your way. 13 years later, I'm making more money than I need as a cop in my hometown, married to an awesome hippie chick that rocks my world. My job can have its rough times, but ultimately beats the heck out of being stuck in an office, and is a pretty varied and exciting way to put food on the table and pay the electric bill. I avoid drama and the people who foster it, and genuinely enjoy life 9 days out of 10. Being chased out of San Jose by 2 brothers. They'd stolen our company, threatened to kill us, and phoned our parents in the UK every hour through the night, telling them we were going to jail for what we had done, which was nothing. They had framed us on hacking charges because they wanted to steal our code and our company. We had no money in the world. We stopped in at Fry's to return my 19-inch CRT monitor to pay for the flight out of there. I think the hardest part was that we had 2 hours to leave our apartment, so we emptied the fridge and freezer and threw it all in the dumpster outside. Bye-bye, Ben & Jerry's. A week after we got home, I opened up my text editor and started the code for our next venture, the virtual pet site Neopets. That one worked out better for us. Neopets, holy crap. I remember Neopets. Oh my gosh. This is seriously the guy that did Neopets? Frick, I gotta see if I can set up a Humans or Reddit or something with this guy. That is a story I'd love to talk about. Living on 3.2 beer and homegrown weed while faking and cheating my way through a technical PhD grad program. Passed my defense by scheduling it late on a Friday afternoon and serving the committee a strong pot of decaf French roast as part of the traditional coffee and snacks. 3 of the 5 were asleep for most of the defense, so the questions at the end were general enough to answer with ease. Got a real job that was interesting enough to engage me for a few years and which prepared me to get into an, at the time, top flight tech company. 22 years later, I'm leading an R&D team at the same company, making enough to send 3 kids to US private colleges on cash flow, and living the dream with a house in the country. And I work about 3 to 4 hours a day because grad school really can pay off. Although, not exactly how my bosses might expect. Part owner in a tech company, underwater on our home mortgage, personal debt from having to skip paychecks to pay staff payroll because of cash flow crunches. Personally guaranteed business lines of credit put what little we had at risk. Then our products took off and we got snapped up by a larger tech company. I pretend like I totally expected everything to work out, but I realize we basically won the lottery. I was a meth addict and bike messenger in San Francisco, sleeping on friends' couches and about 1 step from homelessness. I was educated and trained as a mechanical engineer, but one thing led to another and I was on my last ropes. I took a Hail Mary job as an engineer on the island of Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. They were so desperate for people that they looked past my recent work experience there. The thing about this place is that it is impossible to bring drugs in because you transit through Singapore. So I cleaned up. I worked my way up to Public Works Director in charge of over 500 people. Now I'm doing well back in the States. Don't drink or do drugs, make over $150 a year, and most importantly, have a wife I cherish. Successful? I hope so. Sleeping on the floor of a crack house. Can't get worse than that. Slept about 5 hours and took off. Now I run a kitchen. Not 6 figures, but I'm well off for a dropout runaway. I didn't start college immediately after high school. Wanted to be young and reckless. Skipped state, ended up living with a guy that had a job at first and then quit while I worked 2, retail and food service, to pay his car note. He pawned my things, I left him. Didn't have a place to sleep for a couple of nights. Lost my job, type 1 diabetic with no income and no health insurance. Ended up in the hospital for ketoacidosis a couple of times. Found a place to stay, picked up a job, met my husband on World of Warcraft. Now living comfortably, finishing my bachelor's with 2 interviews lined up for PA school in November. It's nice to be comfortable. I'm still sitting at a pretty low point, but I have a pretty inspiring story from my mom. My mom grew up in a broken family. Rampant physical, sexual, and emotional abuse, alcoholism, the whole 9 yards. At 17, she left home, cut all ties with her abusive family, and started working labor jobs, drinking, and doing drugs. She did that for another 17 years, at times making good money, at times sleeping on friends' couches and eating ketchup. Entering her 30s, she still had an incomplete high school education and spent all her free time drinking, smoking, and doing drugs. At 34, she got pregnant with me, and decided she'd had enough with the life she was living. She cut ties with all her current friends and quit alcohol, cigarettes, and drugs cold turkey. She went back to high school, then went to her local college for a degree in chemical technology. She then proceeded to go to school full-time for 4 years while taking care of a baby and working part-time, with no friends or family to rely on for help. As a chemical technologist, before her retirement, she made $75K a year, paid off our house, and saved up a fair amount of money. Pregnant wife, no job, both living back at my parents' house. PhD to finish and no end in sight. 5 years later, beautiful son, beautiful wife, nice house, and handed in PhD. I know this video has gone a little longer and all, and part of the reason for that is I just wanted to finish out this post, because these kind of posts float up on Reddit fairly frequently, and yet they don't get much traction. This is the only one I've found that has, and there are some really inspiring and good stories in here that I feel all of us could benefit from hearing from time to time. So many of these stories talked about being at absolute low points of drug addiction, of near suicide, of just so many different things, and yet they persevered, got through it, and became better. There is always a hope for a better tomorrow. You just gotta see today through. There's more funny or uplifting Ask Reddit content in the playlist link here on your left, or if you want to see what YouTube thinks might be best for you, go ahead and hit that button right there on the right. Also, go ahead and slam that center button if you want to subscribe to get more of your daily dose of Reddit Hope and Happy. Now you guys, stay safe, stay healthy, stay inside if you're supposed to. I will see you all on Monday. Until then, I'm Exile451. Stay beautiful, people.